is this is our largest single studies yet. We've done this 3 years in a row, and this is the largest one yet. So the information is so cool. We went out on the streets in Texas to sort of ask people what they would think were the answers to these, and I love the one. It was like, how many people actually say that they're in a relationship on Facebook? And everybody was like, oh, 80%, 90%. You'll be shocked. I'm not going to even tell you. But some of the answers are quite surprising, and this is a really fun study. So without any further ado, I do want to tell you what to follow on Twitter. It's #SinglesInUSA. So if you're following or you're tweeting or you're doing anything like that, we'd love for you to do that. So #SinglesInUSA. But the woman with all the answers right here, Dr. Helen Fisher, just like give us a And I make like a Lilliputian when I'm sitting down. Now we're talking. See? It's the blind leading the blonde. So knock yourself out now.
Well, I've never had a fluffer. Works for me. Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming on this snowy day. We now know how to get people out of the home. We just sweets and booze, I think. Anyway, I'm Dr. Helen Fisher. I'm a biological anthropologist. I study love. Could you, somebody push the next slide? I study human romantic love. I've written 5 books on it. What we do is, it's one of the most powerful brain systems the human animal has ever evolved. People live for love, they kill for love, they die for love, they pine for love. All over the world we have love stories, love poems, love magic, myths and legends about love, palaces built for love, temples built for love, operas, plays, ballets, etc. I mean, you know, it's a very powerful brain system that doesn't decline as you get older. It's like the fear system in the brain. You can be scared at any age and you can be madly in love at any age. So, next slide. So I decided I would, after studying evolution of monogamy, formation of the pair bond, mono means one, gamete means spouse, I began to then look at divorce around the world, then I looked at adultery around the world, and I was walking through Greenwich Village one day, and it suddenly occurred to me, maybe we've evolved 3 distinctly different brain systems for mating and reproduction. Sex drive, feelings of intense romantic love, and feelings of deep attachment. And maybe if I could figure out, maybe I could put people into the brain scanner and study all 3 of these brain systems. So I started in on romantic love. And this is from the New Yorker cartoon. You can't get 2 people into a brain scanner. It's a little larger than your head. And we've now begun to understand some of the brain circuitry of romantic love. It's a want, it's a need, it's a craving, it's an obsession that comes from very primitive parts of the brain. Matter of fact, parts of the prefrontal cortex with which you do your thinking shut down. So this is why you make the kind of decisions you make. Anyway, Match.com came to me and asked me, why do you fall in love with one person rather than another? And that started my relationship with them. It's been going on since, I think, 7 years or 8 years now. And we're in the 3rd year of this Singles in America study. And Match really wants to know who singles are. And they're very genuine about it. And it's a very academic, scientific study. It's the 3rd year we've done it. Every year we focus on something different. I'll take the next slide. This year, the first year I was really determined to study men. I think men actually are more romantic than women. All of the data shows that. I'll go into that a little later. We've spent 50 years breaking a lot of myths about women. I feel it's time that we begin to break some myths about men. I'm tired of all of the worn-out statements that men don't commit. We have data since the year 2000 that they're just as interested in commitment. They're more romantic than women, etc. So the second year, because it was a political year, we focused on politics. And this year we focused on technology and the internet. And what else was there? Well, marriage. This year we used 5,481 single people and over 1,000 married people. And we wanted to compare the 2. My hypothesis is that they would be really quite different, and I was wrong. They're very, very similar in many ways, which I will go into. And so there's some basic statistics. What we do in October is we start making up the questions, and then all the questions come back in the middle of December. And probably from the middle of December to this afternoon, I've spent maybe a good 12, 14 hours a day just combing over the hundreds of thousands of data points, looking for patterns of single behavior, single attitudes. Do they have sex on the first date, the sixth date, when they get married? What do they eat on their time off? What do they drink? How much do they sleep? Have they fallen in love? How many times? Etc. Everything that we can possibly think of. And then I begin to hone it down into some bullet points, and then comes when I talk to the public about it. So I think I'll just say a couple things. I know people who are listening in who can't see this PowerPoint. Bless their hearts, because there's much too much on it. You can get this PowerPoint presentation just by going to our website. So there's no point in looking at it anymore. You can get it easily from the website. But bottom line is, one of the important things for me was that when, in the Atlantic recently, in the New York Times, there was a big article called "Marriage is Doomed." Marriage is not doomed. When we asked, do you want to get married? Over 2/3 of men and women in their 20s and 30s said yes. That's the age group of reproduction. I'm an anthropologist, not a psychologist. So as you get older, you become less and less likely to marry, for obvious reasons. It's no longer going to be a reproductive unit, so the brain is probably built to be less and less interested in it. But my guess is that older people are just as, well, we have a lot of data that older people are just as interested in sex and in romance, but less interested in marriage. But the young still want to marry, they still want to have children. Next slide, please. So, what singles want? So I began to ask them, this is the third year in a row we've asked them what they want. And you can check, oh Lord, about 20 different boxes of what you want. And I asked, what must you have? What's very important to you to have? And what's really interesting about it to me is that over 90% of people, men and women, want somebody who respects them, somebody who they can trust and confide in, somebody with a sense of humor who can make them laugh. Now that doesn't seem too odd to you, but when you take a look back through human evolution for the last 10,000 years, what people really sought in a marriage was somebody from the same religious background and the same ethnic background. Less than, very far fewer people today are looking for somebody from the same ethnic background or religious background. Racism, familyism is beginning to move off our focus for marriage and a relationship. And instead, we're turning away from trying to please parents, please family, please community, please religious groups, etc. We're looking for self-fulfillment. We want somebody who we can personally connect to. In many respects, I feel that we're shedding almost 10,000 years of our basic traditions and turning to something which, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, is even healthier. A real personal connection to somebody else. We asked this question, what women judge men by and men judge women by. I can't remember who came up with this question. Could have been me, but bottom line is I put a whole lot of things down there, what they could judge by. The top thing that men and women judge by when they first meet somebody is their teeth. And, once again, as an anthropologist, your teeth say a great deal about your health, your youth, and your fertility. The older you get, what do you say?
And your breath.
And your breath, absolutely. Your hygiene. How many drinks you had this afternoon? How many M&Ms you ate? Bottom line is, the brain is probably quite programmed to look for real signs of youth and fertility, really at any age. And in fact, we see that in both men and women. Grammar is number 2 for both men and women. I think that's more of a cultural thing, actually. It surprised me when I saw it. But I think, we're not in the age where strength is power. We're in the age where communication is power. It's how you can present yourself that makes a real difference. And indeed, both men and women sense it. People with better grammar are probably going to get the better jobs, are going to go higher up the ladder, are going to make more money. What's interesting is I put some of the things at the low. I mean, we kill ourselves wearing shoes, all kinds of shoes. Men don't notice. They don't notice their shoes. Men spend their Saturday washing their car. Women don't notice. We don't notice. So I was rather happy. Men can stop washing their car, and I can wear flat shoes. But the bottom line is you got to keep your teeth and your grammar straight. That's really judged by that. Next slide, please. So singles are optimistic about marriage. I'll just go through a couple things here. When we asked, do you believe that you can stay married forever? And 90% of people who are open to marriage believed that they could stay married forever to the same person. I was doing some television on that this week, and I was, to my misfortune, I said, well, it's really gotten increased from 78% in 2011 to 90% in 2012. So somebody on CNN said, why? And I have a clue. I'm really not a clue. And perhaps some of you will have a clue, and maybe you can tell me, because we're all in this one together. I'll see data, and some things become immediately interesting and clear to me, and other things I don't. I don't know why people are more optimistic now about marriage. I know it's not a mathematical fluke, because when we see a real jump like that, we're working also with a wonderful young biologist from the Kinsey Institute, Dr. Justin Garcia, and Justin goes and he looks and sees whether there's a fluke in the math, or whether we ask the question a little bit differently this time. Bottom line is Americans are getting more and more optimistic about marriage. And in fact, when we asked about married people, all kinds of things about married people have just more sex. They have more sex. They have more orgasms per sexual experience. They go out just as often as singles do. And when we ask the question, would you remarry, would you marry the same person again? 80% said yes. And it was interesting, I got an email from some nasty guy yesterday who said to me, he said, Dr. Fisher, he said, it can't be 80%. And he went through this whole mathematical song and dance about it, how it could only really be 15%. But I'm inclined to write back and say, do what the data you want. All I'm telling you is when we ask the question, 80% say yes. And when we asked married people what they missed about being single, another real mind blower, having an independent schedule is the only thing they missed about being single. Now, I will have to say, Match doesn't really, they're not promoting marriage. What they're interested in is a good, long-term, solid relationship that makes you happy. But I'm a scientist, we're measuring marriage versus single, and sure enough, the American population is much happier than the Atlantic Monthly and the New York Times actually thinks. So, next slide, please. So, where are we headed? What's the road to love? Next slide, please. You skipped one. Great. I'm not going to go through all of this, but you can get it online. But I'll say one thing about Friends with Benefits, which is really interesting. And after this, I want to start to ask you some questions about Friends with Benefits. I started yesterday, and I got to know more about Friends with Benefits. But the interesting thing about it, 47% of singles have had a Friends with Benefits relationship in this past year. And 45% had had a Friends with Benefits relationship that turned into a long-term partnership. And that's what I find so interesting. I'm not surprised, because any kind of sexual stimulation of the genitals drives up dopamine, which can push you over the threshold into falling in love. And with orgasm, there's a real flood of oxytocin that is linked with feelings of attachment. Casual sex is not casual unless you're so drunk you can't remember it. Something happens in the brain. As a matter of fact, I have a wonderful friend who's done a study of kissing, and over 50% of both men and women have had have had the kiss of death. I mean, they started in liking somebody, they kissed them once, and that was it. So bottom line is all kinds of things happen in the brain when you start having sex with somebody. And so I'm not surprised that 45% actually have had a friends with benefits relationship that turned into a long-term partnership. And it's beginning to occur to me, and of all of these, as I said, hundreds of thousands of data points, I looked at that and I said, maybe we're seeing a new stage in the courting, in the emergence of a new stage in the courtship process. Last year, only 20% of people had a friends with benefits relationship turn into a long-term partnership. It's more than doubled. And my hypothesis is that this is an emerging stage in the courtship process. That you start out by going out with a group, you get to know somebody casually, you start having sex with them, you get to know them a lot. When you have sex with them, it either breaks off, boom, or it starts to move into a longer-term relationship. And I think that's really interesting because, we're marrying later. We bring to our marriages or our relationships more possessions. We have this long middle age into old age. It's painful getting a divorce. And in some respects, it appears to me that we're trying to know everything we possibly can about a human being before we step into that first commitment stage. And that this is a pre-commitment stage that is emerging in America. So this is the kind of thing that next year when we do it again, I will follow and I will ask a whole lot more. How long are your friends with benefits relationships? I don't even know that. And many other questions that I will ask about that. What's interesting is for every trend, there's a counter trend. Every trend in the world, there's a counter trend. And as more and more people are having their one-night stands and friends with benefits, more women are beginning to say they will not have sex until they are in a committed relationship. 37% say that they want the commitment first. And actually, because I study the brain and because I study hormone and neurotransmitter systems, my guess is, I bet I can actually talk a bit about the personality profile of that type of person as opposed to the others. They're going to come from the Midwest. They're going to come from the South. They're going to be a certain style of thinking and behaving. So next slide, please. Rules and taboos of internet etiquette. This is something that interested everybody but me. I'm a dinosaur. I figured out my computer and my toaster, so that's about it. But what's interesting to me was, this, as culture changes, it changes in two ways. It changes with new rules, and it changes with taboos. For example, there are now rules that you can't smoke in an airport. But there are no rules about walking into somebody's personal home and smoking. It's becoming a taboo instead of a rule. So I became interested in what are the taboos on the internet? What are the things that we are so almost as a almost a uniform culture beginning to develop in terms of beliefs about how you handle these internet systems? And one thing that really interested me is 60% of singles now think it's rude to text on a date. Well, my response would be, how come it isn't 96%, but never mind. This one's interesting. 48% of women and 38% of men would research a date before going on the date. So what's new? I mean, let's go back a million years ago on the grasslands of Africa. I mean, that girl pulls up to a water hole with her family, and she sees some people at the other, she's a cute boy at the other end of the water hole. She doesn't know him. The first thing she's going to say to her mother is, do you know him? What do you know about him? I mean, bottom line is the human brain wants to know everything it possibly can. And so I don't know why they aren't all researching before a date. What's interesting is that 49% of men think that researching is unacceptable. And so I began to think, I mean, I have a hypothesis, you may have your own hypotheses, but my guess is, and maybe the men in the room could help me on this, is that they're afraid that it's some sort of semblance of stalking. Yeah. What were you going to say?
I was just curious, you specifically mentioned Facebook. There's so many other ways to research
to do it.
Did you ask that question as well?
I got to go back and look at the data. It's a very, very good question. And that's the kind of thing that if we can remember this for next year, we have to refine all of these things year by year. We'll keep refining until we get a really good. But actually, if you want to email me, I can look tonight. And Helen Fisher at helenfisher.com. I can see what the real questions were. So men don't want to find it unacceptable. I wonder if that's going to be a taboo or whether they're going to move into feeling more comfortable about it. That'll be interesting. And women are going to do more and more of it. It's natural to be women want transparency. I don't blame them. About 50% of men want. Women want to be able to borrow his cell phone. That's a deal breaker. She can't borrow. If he won't let you use your cell phone, it's a deal breaker. If he's texting in private, secretly, if he's picking up his phone and walking out to have his secret phone calls and everything, boom. These are deal breakers. I admire that actually because my generation probably wouldn't have done that. I admire the sort of the transparency actually of the young today. Next slide, please. Sexting. I really had to study sexting. Everybody at Match knew Helen needed to study sexting. I mean, I have a kid that really came of age in the 1960s. We were giving our boyfriends nude pictures, but they couldn't go viral. So my issue was about privacy. Do these people have they figured out the issues here, or are they just just going out and doing it anyway? And they are doing it. Over a third of both men and women have sent a sext. 45% of women and 57% of men have received a sext, either a photo or a erotic text. Almost 1/4 have shared that sext, and 42% of men have shared it with 3 or more other people. And so we were scratching our head on that. And then we asked the question, would you be offended if your sext was shared? And 42% of men said no. So Justin Garcia, we're all on the phone, there's this long silence, and Justin, who's the only guy in our little group, he said, they're advertising. And that's probably what they're doing. And so then what I was really interested in is not only the sexting, but whether they understood the danger of this. And indeed they do. 72% think it would be could jeopardize their career. Next slide, please. And the reason I think they are sexting is because the brain was built a long time ago, and no peacock makes its feathers look little. No moose tries to make its antlers a little smaller. People try to put out their best in courtship. Because don't forget what Darwin said. If you have 4 children and I have no children, you live on and I die out. The game of love matters. And indeed, when it comes to sexting, they know that, they'll keep their Facebook clean for the boss and clean for the parents and clean for new dates. But when it comes to wanting somebody, that profound drive to love, you overlook all the risks and send your sext. Next slide, please. So the down economy hasn't stopped love. All 3 years we found that over 2/3 of people have not changed their dating habits because of the. I'm not surprised. The economies come and go. Love sticks around. Next slide, please. So gays and lesbians. I really have long believed that we way overdue the understanding of gay and straight. We've put people in brain scanners, and the gay brain shows exactly the same patterns for romantic love as do straight people. They have exactly the same brain circuits for feelings of attachment as heterosexuals. The brains are really very, very similar. And what we found is that gay people fall in love more, particularly gay men. They're more romantic. Gay men are more romantic. I think they're more romantic because any barrier to love cranks up the system more. That makes you love harder. And they don't have any more sex than heterosexuals. Next slide, please. So, what do we want? Next slide, please. Changing sexual landscape. This blew me out of the water. 42% of singles would not date a virgin. Not date a virgin. 33% of men, 1 out of 3 men, would not date a virgin. Now, for at least 10,000 years, one of the core values of around the world was virginity until marriage. And in one generation, we have the reverse. That's so interesting to me. And I once again think it's because we want a solid commitment to a human being. And we want to get to know every single thing about them before we make that commitment. And you learn so much about a human being from having sex with them. This is one of my favorite questions. I've asked it every year. Would you make a long-term commitment to somebody who has everything you were looking for, but you did not find them sexually attractive? 27% of men and 27% of women said yes. And the ones that said yes were young, not old, young. And actually more men than women, I didn't put that data in here, are willing to make a long-term commitment to somebody who had everything they were looking for, but they were not sexually attractive. More men than women. And my hypothesis is that the young have to reproduce. And indeed, if a young man has a girlfriend who, she's very pretty, she's very smart, she's very funny, his family really likes her, his friends all really like her, she's dying to marry him, and he does not find her that sexually attractive. What he's really hot for is some girl on the wrong side of town, barely speaks his language, he could never bring home to mom. He's going to make a long-term commitment to somebody who is a reproductively viable thing. Next slide, please. And same thing with romance. I love this one. 40% of people have fallen in love with somebody who they did not initially find attractive. If there's one thing that you walk out of here with that I've said over and over, and will say again, the bottom line in the singles world is think of reasons to say yes. You know, you go out on that first date, you know very little about a person, and so you overweight those few things that you know. Oh, he's got brown shoes, forget it, never. You know, oh man, he's 2 inches shorter, I mean, shorter than I wanted. No, I can't do it. Well, then, had you hung around, you found out that he was extremely smart, extremely funny, extremely rich. The 2 inches you would carry you know, but you don't. So think of reasons to say yes. This is something, duration of intense romantic love. Nobody in academia knows that. This is the first data that we've got. I can't tell you how many times. That'll be an academic article. Several of these will be an academic article of mine. The duration of intense romantic love. Most people, when we ask about your last relationship, how long did you feel intense romantic love? Most people said 2 to 5 years. Americans seem to think it lasts a couple months and that's it. There's no good data on this. This is a great opportunity for me, actually, as an anthropologist, to collect this wonderful body of data and begin to bust a lot more myths. But one interesting, would you make a long-term commitment to somebody who had everything you were looking for, but you were not in love with them? And once again, more men than women would say yes. And it's the young that do it because they need to reproduce. Next slide, please. So this is what women really want. They want independence. More women want girls' nights out than boys. Next slide, please. I did a lot of this last year. Men seem to want commitment. Men fall in love faster than women do because they're so visual. They're more likely to believe in love at first sight. They're more likely to experience love at first sight. They want public displays of affection sooner in the relationship. They want to move in sooner. And actually, men have more intimate conversations with their partners than women do with their partners, because women have their intimate conversations with their girlfriends, and men don't. Everybody in the office found this one interesting. 48% of men want to meet a date's parents before becoming exclusive. I guess they want to know what she's going to look like in 30 years. And you learn a lot about a human being from where they grew up and how their parents handled them and how they handled their parents, et cetera, et cetera. At least you're going to have to look at these in-laws sometimes, so there's that too. Next slide, please. So this is the last, and then I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm older, and just like I'd like to knock out of the water some myths about gays and some myths about men, I want to knock out of the water some myths about older people. These brain systems don't change. You would fall in love just as powerfully in your 60s as you can in your 20s. I have data on this. And sure enough, when we asked what would make you happier, more sex and more romance, people over 70 were no different from people in their 20s. They don't want to marry them, by the way. These are the least square. They don't want to marry them, but they want more sex and more romance. So I will, next slide, please. So I'm going to end with a point. It's a larger point than this story. You may have seen this. I did a TED Talk in which I used these slides. I took these right outside of Central Park a few years ago myself. And this is about intimacy, but I put them here to make a larger point. Women tend to get intimacy from face-to-face talking. We swivel, so we're face-to-face. We do the anchoring gaze, and we talk. It's intimacy to women. It comes, I think, from millions of years of holding that baby in front of your face, cajoling it, reprimanding it, educating it with words. Words are intimacy to women. Next slide, please. Men get intimacy from doing things side by side. As soon as he looks up, he'll look away. I think it comes from millions of years of sitting behind that bush on the grasslands of Africa trying to hit that buffalo in the head with a rock. You cannot be talking to your neighbor while you're doing your job. And of course, you know, on a Sunday football game, men are sitting side by side looking at the game. They have no conversation for several hours, and yet it's extremely intimate to them. Next slide, please. And there's the problem. Bottom line is, Match.com wants to figure out who we are. And I'm going to help them figure out who we are. And together, and with you, hopefully also, we're going to make even better relationships in the United States. So next slide, please. This is where you can get your information. And thank you very much. So, do we have questions or what? Or should we just move to the booth?
My question is, I have a question. Age group for the people you did the survey with, because some of us, because what I do, I don't see a lot of what was said up here. That's why I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, the age group. We have, it's based on the U.S., that's a very important question, and I should have started out with it. Thank you. We are, so I am celebrating. On this, and this is my last gig, and I'm going to get it is based on the U.S. Census. So we got the right number of blacks, whites, Asians, Latinos, gay, straight, rural, suburban, urban, every region of the country, and every age group starting 21, 21 by decade, 21 up to 71 plus. As a matter of fact, next year I think we should do teenagers. I came up with that last night. But I'd be interested to know how teenagers are doing it too.
How many people were in this?
And 5,481 singles and something like 1,095 married, but I'm not quite sure. Yeah, over 1,000 married, and so basically it's based on the U.S. Census. So we have an absolutely representative American sample.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Cheers. Here's to all of you. To love, right? Valentine's Day. Somebody else.
Can you,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, what was the point that you did find the most surprising, personally? The single, statistic? Can you
I think the Friends with Benefits really surprised me to see the emergence of a new stage. It's as if we are slowing down the commitment and speeding up the sex. So you're having the sex sooner and sooner, and the commitment later and later. And I mean, from a Darwinian evolutionary perspective, that's certainly the way our ancestors did it. In matter of fact, I've often said to the press that I think what we're really is we're moving forward to the kind of lifestyle we had a million years ago. You know, a million years ago, you've heard me say this, women commuted to work to gather their fruits and vegetables. They came home with 60 to 80% of the evening meals. On the grasslands of Africa, we were traveling in these little hunting and gathering bands. Women were just as economically powerful as men. They were just as sexual as men and just as socially powerful as men. And then we began to settle down on the farm maybe about 10,000 years ago. With that, men's roles became much more important, moving the rocks, felling the trees, plowing the land, going off to local markets, coming home with the equivalent of money. Women lost their ancient roles as gathering, and we see the rise of the double standard. You see it in all agrarian farming cultures around the world. Then, with the beginning of the First World War, you see more and more women piling into the job market. You see the rise of women. There's two great modern social trends: the rise of women economically and moving in the job market, and the extended lifespan. More and more people reaching old age. And with that, we are moving forward towards economic equality between the sexes, which is what we had for millions of years. We're seeing more trial marriages. Anthropologists call it trial marriages before the real marriage. We're seeing in hunting and gathering societies, I'm not recommending it, but often children have sex by age 10 and 11 and 12. We're seeing more teenage sexuality. We're seeing more sexuality before marriage. We're seeing a series of marriages in a hunting and gathering society. A woman did tend to have 2 or 3 husbands during the course of her life, and so did men. So we're moving forward. We're shedding 10,000 years of the agrarian tradition with all of those beliefs. You know, at the beginning of the farming culture, the belief that a woman's place is in the home, no hunter-gatherer would say that. A belief that women are less sexual. Someday we're going to figure out that women are just as sexual as men. The belief that the man is the head of the household. The belief that the women are less competent in business. That we're in our lifetime, we are seeing the shedding of these agrarian beliefs and moving forward to the lifestyle that is actually more compatible with the human brain. Yeah.
I was just wondering what some of the hurdles were that you had to overcome to conduct this research, because I know that sex is one of the most taboo topics still in American culture. I think second only to discussing personal finances. So I'm just wondering how you overcame that in your research.
It's very interesting. Scientists call America a sex-negative society. Whereas because we link sex with sin in Christianity. And all through Asia, they don't link sex with sin. So how did I overcome it? Well, I don't know if I should tell a story. Not everybody wants me to ask questions about orgasm, but with enough persistence, I was able to ask some questions about orgasm. And other than that, it's been very easy. Match is very interested, and they have an online, like Roper or Gallup or whatever. They're called market tools who collect the data, and it's all very private, of course. And so I haven't had any problems really. Yeah.
Yeah, so what were their reasons? What did they say to you about the orgasm questions? Like, how open could they seriously be about, we don't want you to ask these questions?
Well, everybody ended up being very eager to have us ask them. Absolutely. And we asked them, and I'm talking about them.
Okay,
yeah.
Good.
And as a matter of fact, one of the biggest hits last year, you never know quite what the press is going to be excited about, but one of the hits was that Republicans have more orgasms. We're scratching our head now, how can this be? And of course, the first thing that everybody says, they're lying. I don't think they're lying. I have various hypotheses about this, but we can go into that anyway. Somebody else.
I'm so interested in some of the shifts you found away from more traditional dating, like the friends with benefits and attitudes towards sex. And I was just wondering your thoughts on how people are impacted by the conversation around dating. Like if there's this real shift happening, but still the larger conversation is still traditional, how do you think people are getting past it? Or is it just that through our own conversations we're realizing that there's a different way to go? Or?
I think it's fascinating. I mean, 2/3 of those in their 20s and 30s still want to marry. So they have held on to a very, powerful paradigm. But within that paradigm, they're just experimenting like mad. And, the human animal is driven to form pair bonds. 97% of mammals do not pair up to rear their young. Human beings do. Everywhere in the world, human beings pair up to rear their young. So I'm not surprised that even with all of these different ways of getting to know people that are expanding, the basic focus still is on a long-term relationship, even in the gay community as you age. That's not going to disappear. It's in the brain. In parts of the brain way below the cortex, way below emotional centers, down in regions that are linked with survival, with the craving for food and water. These are cravings for attachment and romance. They're not going to change. How we express it's going to change, though.